The first time I realized my life had been built on silence, it wasn't because someone screamed or because a terrible secret was uncovered. It happened on an ordinary rainy evening when the apartment door creaked open, the bathroom steam drifted into the hallway, and my roommate walked out wearing my oversized robe. There was nothing inappropriate about the moment itself, yet something in the expression on that familiar face stopped time. Those tired eyes, usually hidden behind forced smiles and endless jokes, carried a weight that could no longer be ignored. Then came the quiet confession that changed everything forever. I think it's time we stopped pretending. In that instant, every unanswered question, every awkward silence, and every sacrifice we had both buried beneath our busy lives suddenly demanded to be heard. Before we continue this emotional journey, please take a second to like this video, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, share this story with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness so you never miss another unforgettable story that reminds us how powerful compassion can be. Life had never been easy for me. After losing my father, every dream I had carefully built seemed to collapse overnight. Bills piled up, my savings disappeared, and I was forced to rent a tiny apartment with a stranger just to survive. That stranger was Emily, someone whose quiet personality perfectly matched mine. We rarely talked about our pasts. We simply shared responsibilities, respected each other's space, and slowly developed an unspoken routine that made the apartment feel less lonely. She worked long hospital shifts while I struggled to keep my freelance business alive. Some nights we barely saw each other except for a quick greeting before one of us disappeared into a bedroom, exhausted by another difficult day. Over the months, I noticed little things about her that didn't fit the cheerful version she showed the world. Sometimes she stared out the kitchen window for several minutes without moving. Other times she smiled while holding her phone, only for tears to quietly roll down her cheeks moments later. She never explained those moments, and I never asked. We were roommates, not family. At least, that was the story we kept telling ourselves. Despite our emotional distance, kindness slowly became the language we shared. If I came home late, dinner was waiting in the microwave. If she returned after a difficult shift, fresh coffee was already brewing. When my laptop finally died before an important deadline, she silently placed hers on the table before leaving for work, trusting me completely. When she caught the flu, I spent 3 nights checking her temperature and making soup because there was nobody else who would. Neither of us called these moments friendship. We simply pretended they were ordinary. Then everything began falling apart again. My biggest client canceled a contract that paid most of my income. I spent weeks hiding rejection emails, pretending I was fine while secretly wondering how long I could afford rent. At the same time, Emily started coming home even later than usual. Dark circles surrounded her eyes, and her laughter disappeared completely. The apartment, once filled with small acts of kindness, became painfully quiet. The evening of the confession arrived after one of the worst storms of the year. The power flickered, thunder shook the windows, and I sat in the living room trying to calculate which bills I could postpone. Emily stepped into the shower almost immediately after coming home from work. Minutes later she walked into the hallway wearing my robe because hers had accidentally been left in the washing machine. She wasn't embarrassed. She wasn't smiling. She simply looked exhausted, as if carrying years of invisible pain. That was when she softly admitted she was tired of pretending everything was okay. For the first time since we met, the invisible walls between us disappeared. She revealed that her mother had been battling a serious illness for months. Every extra hospital shift, every sleepless night, every missing weekend had been an attempt to pay for treatments insurance refused to cover. She had hidden everything because she didn't want anyone's sympathy. She believed asking for help meant becoming a burden, and she had spent her entire life trying to prove she could survive alone. Hearing her story shattered something inside me because I realized I had been doing exactly the same thing. I confessed that I hadn't been successful at all. My business was collapsing. I was weeks away from losing everything. Every confident smile I wore had simply been another disguise to hide my fear. We had shared an apartment for almost 2 years while carrying unbearable pain only a few feet apart. Something remarkable happened after that conversation. Neither of our problems disappeared overnight, but the loneliness did. We stopped pretending to be strangers sharing rent and began acting like people who genuinely cared about each other. We created budgets together, cooked meals instead of ordering expensive takeout, encouraged one another after disappointing days, and celebrated even the smallest victories. Hope slowly returned, not because life became easier, but because neither of us had to face it alone anymore. A few weeks later, I received an unexpected opportunity from a former client who remembered my work and offered me a long-term contract. It wasn't enough to make me wealthy, but it gave me stability again. Around the same time, Emily's mother's condition finally began improving after doctors found a treatment that showed encouraging results. Watching Emily smile without forcing it felt like witnessing sunrise after months of endless rain. Looking back, I realized the biggest lie we had ever believed wasn't about our finances or our personal struggles. It was the idea that strength meant suffering in silence. We had mistaken isolation for independence, believing vulnerability would make us weaker. Instead, honesty became the very thing that rescued us. Sometimes the people living only a few steps away are carrying battles we never notice simply because everyone has become too afraid to admit they need someone. Years later, whenever people ask how two random roommates became lifelong friends, I don't tell them about contracts, hospital bills, or financial hardships. I remember that rainy evening when one simple sentence broke down every wall we had built around our hearts. The apartment itself never changed. The furniture remained old, the walls stayed plain, and the rent continued arriving every month. Yet somehow it transformed into a place where healing quietly began because two broken people finally stopped pretending they were okay. If this story has touched your heart so far, please support Ripple of Kindness by liking this video, sharing it with someone who may need hope today, and subscribing for more emotional stories that remind us kindness can change lives in ways we never expect. Special request: before the story ends, leave a comment below and tell us, have you ever hidden your struggles because you didn't want to burden someone else? As life moved forward, Emily often said that healing didn't begin when circumstances improved. Healing began the moment someone finally listened without judgment. That simple truth stayed with me forever. We never know what battles another person is quietly fighting behind a polite smile. A small act of kindness, a patient conversation, or the courage to tell the truth may become the turning point that changes someone's entire life. Sometimes the greatest second chance doesn't arrive through luck or money. Sometimes it arrives through honesty, compassion, and the unexpected family we find in the people who choose to stand beside us when the pretending finally ends.